Is your mind still running a marathon even though your body is ready to stop? While you lie here, your thoughts might be competing for your attention, sprinting through a race that has no finish line. But tonight, there is no clock to beat and no score to keep. We're going back to a time before stadiums, when the world's greatest sports were born from ancient rituals and simple play. As we uncover how these games began, let the rhythm of the past slow down your pulse. You don't need to win the night. Just listen, breathe, and let the stories carry you toward sleep. Tonight, we're going to discover a story of remarkable resilience, of how one man transformed the confines of a World War I internment camp into a laboratory of human potential. We're going to trace the origins of Pilates, not from elegant studios or wealthy spas, but from barbed wire and bed springs, from forced confinement and the determination to find strength even in the darkest circumstances. We'll hear the rhythmic creak of iron springs as hospital beds became exercise equipment. Feel the focus that forced confinement paradoxically provided, and understand the journey from wartime necessity to the sanctuary of modern wellness. So settle deeper into your pillow. Let each word carry you to the windswept Isle of Man, to the gray wooden huts, and the ingenuity born of desperation, and eventually to the peaceful studios where that innovation has become a source of healing and strength for millions. There's nothing to do, nothing to remember. Just the gentle story of how resilience transforms suffering into something beautiful. Picture England in the summer of 1914. In traveling circuses and touring shows across the country, performers from across Europe entertained crowds with acrobatics, strength displays, and theatrical spectacles. Among them is a young German man named Joseph Pilates, born in Mönchengladbach in 1883. He travels with his brother as part of a German circus troupe, performing what they call a Greek statue act, poses that display physical strength and classical beauty, their bodies held in positions meant to evoke ancient sculptures. Joseph knows physical culture intimately. As a sickly child, he studied yoga, martial arts, gymnastics, anything that might strengthen his frail body. Now, in his 30s, he's transformed himself into an athlete, a boxer, a circus performer, a man who has made the study of human movement his life's work. But none of this matters when, on August 4th, 1914, Britain declares war on Germany. Within days, Parliament passes the Aliens Restriction Act. Any German national of military age living in Britain must register as an alien at local police stations. Joseph, a single man with limited English traveling with a circus, he's an easy target for suspicion. In the anti-German fervor that sweeps Britain following the outbreak of war, he's arrested, questioned, and then sent to internment. The journey takes him first to Sandhurst, then Jersey, then Lancaster, each move bringing new uncertainty. And finally, in September 1915, he arrives at his destination, Knockalow Internment Camp on the Isle of Man, a small island in the Irish Sea between England and Ireland. Picture that arrival. It's evening, the tin gray sky darkening toward night. Joseph and 660 other men disembark from the steam-powered ship Connaught at Douglas Breakwater. They're marched to the railway station, loaded onto trains that weave sluggishly into the heart of the island. When the train stops at St. John's Station, they march again, this time on foot, for hours through soil that sinks like clay beneath their boots. They cross streams, pass through cattle gates, their legs aching, their spirits sinking with each step into this unknown future. In the distance, lights flicker, hundreds of them, unusual in the wartime darkness. For a moment, one of the men thinks it looks almost like Paris. But as they draw closer, the truth becomes apparent. Those lights don't illuminate a city. They reveal a compound enclosed by barbed wire, dozens upon dozens of closely packed wooden huts, sterile and identical, arranged in neat rows. This is Nakalo Internment Camp, and it will be Joseph Pilates' home for the next 3.5 years. By the time he arrives, Nakalo houses over 16,000 men, with more arriving every week. The camp will eventually hold 23,000 at its peak, making it the largest internment facility in Britain. It's divided into 4 subcamps, each surrounded by barbed wire, each containing more than 5,000 men. Joseph is assigned to Camp 4, given a wooden bunk bed in one of the huts, and told to find work if he wants money for necessities beyond the basic rations. The conditions breed what internees call barbed wire disease, what we would now recognize as depression. Men confined with nothing to do, nothing to work toward, sink into apathy and despair. They're not prisoners of war, having committed no crime except being born German and living in Britain when war broke out. But they're imprisoned nonetheless, years of their lives spent in limbo, waiting for a war to end. For most of the internees, this is simply a prison sentence to be endured. But for Joseph Pilates, internee number 14,001, confinement offers something unexpected: opportunity. Joseph watches his fellow internees deteriorate. Week by week, month by month, he sees strong men grow weak. Healthy bodies become frail, active minds sink into lethargy. The camp offers some sports and gymnastics. There are records of a gymnastics festival just days after Joseph's arrival, but many men don't participate. They simply exist, marking time, waiting. But Joseph cannot be idle. He spent his life studying movement, and now, surrounded by thousands of men in various states of health, he has what he will later call his laboratory. He has time, nothing but time, and he has subjects, fellow internees with different body types, different ailments, different levels of strength and mobility, and he has inspiration from an unlikely source: the cats that wander into the camp. These feral animals are starving, nothing but fur and bones, surviving on scraps in a place where even the internees barely have enough to eat. But Joseph notices something remarkable. Despite their emaciation, the cats are lithe, springy, efficient. They move with a grace and power that seems impossible given their physical condition. They stretch constantly, arching their backs, extending their limbs, maintaining flexibility and strength through movement itself. Joseph begins to develop a system of floor exercises, using body weight as resistance, drawing inspiration from the cat's natural movements, from yoga he studied in his youth, from gymnastics and martial arts, and every discipline of physical culture he's encountered. These exercises, performed on the wooden floors of the camp huts or on the earth outside, become the foundation of what will eventually be known as Pilates mat work. But then comes the innovation that will define his method. According to Joseph's own accounts, though documentation is limited and some historians question the details, he begins working as an orderly in one of the camp's hospitals. Each of the 4 subcamps has a hospital hut, and each hospital employs 7 to 10 internees as orderlies, paid positions that many men seek for both the income and the occupation. In the hospital, Joseph encounters men confined to their beds. Some are ill with tuberculosis, which is rife in the cramped, poorly ventilated camp. Others are injured or recovering from surgery. They lie in metal hospital beds, unable to move, their bodies weakening from inactivity, their spirits crushed by helplessness. And Joseph has an idea. If these men can't get out of bed to exercise, he'll bring the exercise to them. Picture him in the hospital hut, early morning perhaps, the light gray and weak through small windows. He approaches one of the metal beds, examining its construction. These beds have springs, not the box springs we know today, but individual metal coil springs that support the mattress, providing some give and flexibility. Joseph begins to detach these springs from their moorings. Listen to the sound, the creak of metal as he works, prying springs loose with whatever tools he can find or improvise. The slight musical ping as a spring is freed, the tension releasing. Metal scraping against metal. It's not loud. Hospitals require quiet, but it's persistent, rhythmic, the sound of determined innovation. He attaches the springs to the bed frame in new configurations. Some he fixes to the headboard, creating resistance for arm exercises. Others attached to the footboard for leg work. The springs stretch and contract, providing adjustable resistance that can be made easier or harder depending on how many springs he uses, how far he stretches them. Patients lying in bed can now push and pull against these springs, engaging their muscles, maintaining strength even while bedridden. Feel the sensation in your imagination. You're one of those patients confined to bed for weeks with illness. Joseph approaches and shows you his invention. You grasp a handle attached to a spring mounted on the headboard. The metal is cool in your hand, smooth from use. Joseph instructs you to pull slowly, steadily. You feel the resistance, the spring stretching, requiring effort, but not so much that it's impossible. Your muscles engage, some of them, for the first time in weeks. There's a subtle creak as the spring extends, then a slight whisper of metal on metal as you release and it contracts again. The rhythm becomes meditative. Pull, release, pull, release. The creaking spring creates its own music, a soundtrack to recovery. Joseph emphasizes control, precision, breath. Don't just yank the spring, move with intention. Breathe. Feel each muscle as it contracts and extends. Focus your mind on the movement, making it deliberate, making it conscious. This is Pilates being born. Not in a gleaming studio, but in a hospital hut on the Isle of Man, surrounded by barbed wire, not with expensive equipment, but with bed springs, ingeniously repurposed, not as a luxury wellness practice, but as a tool for survival, a way to prevent the complete physical deterioration of men trapped in circumstances beyond their control. The other orderlies and doctors notice patients using Joseph's spring apparatus improve faster than those receiving only traditional care. They maintain muscle mass and strength even during long bed rest. Their spirits improve too, buoyed by the sense that they're actively participating in their recovery rather than passively waiting to heal. Joseph experiments further, refining his techniques, developing new exercises, observing what works and what doesn't. He's creating a method based not on theory alone, but on direct observation and practical application. The forced confinement, which crushes so many of his fellow internees, provides him with focus. There are no distractions here, no other demands on his time. He can dedicate himself completely to understanding how the human body moves, how it strengthens, how it heals. The bed spring apparatus will eventually evolve into what Pilates practitioners today call the Cadillac, or trapeze table, a bed-like structure with springs and bars that provides resistance and support for hundreds of different exercises. And the principles he develops in that hospital hut, control, precision, breath, focus, the use of springs for variable resistance, will become the foundation of an entirely new approach to physical fitness. In March 1919, the war finally ends for Joseph Pilates. He's released from Nakalo and repatriated to Germany. He returns briefly to his homeland, but Germany, in the aftermath of World War I, is devastated, economically ruined, politically unstable, struggling to feed its population. Joseph doesn't stay long. In 1926, now 43 years old, he boards a ship to America. The journey takes him to New York City, that great magnet for immigrants seeking new beginnings. Aboard the ship, he meets a woman named Clara, a nursery school teacher. Their connection is immediate. By the time they arrive in New York, they're partners in life and in the work he envisions. Picture Manhattan in the mid-1920s. The city thrums with energy, still riding high on post-war prosperity, jazz spilling from nightclubs, skyscrapers rising higher each year. In this vibrant, chaotic city, Joseph and Clara find a space at 939 8th Avenue, sharing a building with the New York City Ballet. They open a studio, the first dedicated Pilates studio in the world, though Joseph doesn't call it Pilates. He calls his method contrology, the art of control, emphasizing the conscious command of movement. The studio is simple compared to modern facilities. Wooden floors worn smooth by thousands of footsteps, windows that let in New York light, soft and gray in winter, bright and harsh in summer, and the equipment, evolved versions of what Joseph created in the internment camp. The Reformer, a sliding carriage on tracks with springs providing resistance. The Cadillac, recognizably descended from those bed springs attached to hospital beds. The Wonder Chair, the ladder barrel, each piece designed to support and challenge the body in specific ways. The clients come slowly at first, but they come. Professional dancers discover that Joseph's method helps them recover from injuries and perform with greater control and grace. George Balanchine, the legendary choreographer, sends his dancers to the Pilates studio. Martha Graham sends her company members. Word spreads through the dance community. There's a German man on 8th Avenue who can fix bodies that seem beyond repair, who can make dancers stronger and more resilient. The studio remains in operation for 40 years, a testament to the efficacy of the method and Joseph's dedication to his work. He's a demanding teacher, insisting on precision and control, but his students revere him. He's taking what he learned in confinement, those principles of focused movement, controlled resistance, mindful breath, and offering them to some of the world's most elite athletes. And beyond dance, the military takes notice. The method that began as a survival tool in an internment camp becomes part of training protocols for the United States Army, and eventually for elite special operations units like the Navy SEALs. The prisoner's innovation becomes the warrior's preparation. The tools of confinement become tools of strength. Today, Pilates is a global phenomenon. Studios exist in every major city, from New York to Tokyo, from London to Sydney. The Sports and Fitness Industry Association reported in recent years that Pilates participation has surged by nearly 40%, with over 12 million practitioners in the United States alone. Studios regularly sell out classes, and the method continues to evolve while maintaining its core principles. But the atmosphere has transformed completely from those origins in Nakalo. Walk into a modern Pilates studio and you'll find serene spaces designed for calm and concentration. Soft lighting, perhaps natural light filtering through windows. Quiet music playing in the background. Not the rhythmic creak of bed springs, but carefully curated playlists meant to soothe rather than energize. The equipment gleams, beautifully engineered versions of Joseph's improvised machines, upholstered in leather or vinyl, the springs precisely calibrated for consistent resistance. The students arrive in expensive athletic wear, carrying yoga mats and water bottles, ready for an hour of mindful movement that will strengthen their cores and improve their flexibility. They lie on reformers that cost thousands of dollars, their feet in leather straps, their hands grasping handles, moving through sequences that trace directly back to Joseph's original exercises, but are performed in an atmosphere of wellness and self-care rather than survival. The sensory experience could not be more different from that hospital hut on the Isle of Man. Instead of the smell of antiseptic and illness, there's lavender or eucalyptus from essential oil diffusers. Instead of the creak of improvised equipment, there's the smooth whisper of precision-engineered springs. Instead of the gray light through camp windows, there's the warm glow of designed lighting meant to create ambiance and calm. And yet, something essential remains. The focus, the control, the precise conscious movement. The understanding that strength comes not from random effort, but from mindful practice. The belief that the body can be trained to move with efficiency and grace, that rehabilitation isn't just about regaining lost function, but about discovering capabilities you didn't know you had. Joseph Pilates died in New York in 1967 at age 83, still teaching, still innovating, still believing in the method he'd developed in that unlikely laboratory of confinement. He never saw the global explosion of interest in Pilates that would occur in the decades after his death, but he knew what he'd created had value, had power, had the potential to transform lives. From bed springs and barbed wire to serene studios and wellness retreats, the journey is complete. What began as a way to survive imprisonment has become a path to vitality. What was born of necessity has become a choice, a practice, a sanctuary. The prisoner's resilience has become everyone's opportunity to find strength, control, and peace in movement. As the echoes of that ancient arena fade away, another story begins to take shape in the mist of time. This next game didn't start with a whistle or a crowd, but with a simple moment of curiosity that changed history forever. Picture Germany around the year 300, in the decades following the Roman Empire's official recognition of Christianity. The new faith is spreading through Germanic territories, taking root in communities that have their own ancient customs and traditions. German men of this era never venture far without a club, a kegel, they call it, a wooden implement somewhere between a staff and a weapon, tapered like a spindle, used both for protection and for various games of skill. As Christianity weaves itself into the fabric of daily life, the priests and monks begin to see spiritual symbolism in these everyday objects. If a man carries a kegel for protection against physical threats, what if that same kegel could represent spiritual threats? What if it could embody sin itself, or the devil, or the pagan heathen, the Haida, from which converts were turning away? And so, in the cloisters of churches, in the quiet courtyards of monasteries, a ritual develops. Picture one of these early Christian communities, perhaps in Bavaria or Saxony. The stone church sits solid and gray against the landscape, its walls thick enough to withstand centuries, its floors paved with great slabs of limestone or granite, quarried from nearby hills and fitted together with remarkable precision. After service, after prayers and hymns have echoed through the vaulted space, the congregation files outside into the cloister, a covered walkway surrounding an open courtyard, its roof supported by columns, its floor the same cool stone that covers the church interior. And here, a transformation takes place. The sacred space becomes something else, a place of trial, of testing, of spiritual reckoning. A monk or priest places a kegel at the far end of the cloister walkway. The wooden club stands upright, its tapered end pointing skyward, its base planted firmly on the stone floor. This kegel, ordinary wood shaped by ordinary hands, has been transformed through declaration and belief into something more. It represents the Haida, the heathen, the unconverted, the part of yourself that clings to old ways and old sins. Or sometimes it represents sin more directly, your pride, your envy, your wrath. The things you confessed this morning, the burdens you carry, the spiritual weight that makes your soul feel heavy and unclean. One by one, the parishioners approach. Each receives a stone, not a carved ball, but a river stone, smooth and heavy, perhaps the size of a large melon, weighing 5 or 10 pounds or more. Feel that weight in your imagination. The stone is cool to the touch, its surface worn smooth by centuries of water flow, but substantial, real, requiring both hands to hold comfortably. It's heavy enough that you can't carry it carelessly. Its weight demands attention, respect. You stand at one end of the walkway. The kegel waits perhaps 30 or 40 feet away, a single wooden pin standing in judgment. The stone feels impossibly heavy in your hands. You breathe, trying to steady yourself. This matters. This is not mere sport or entertainment. This is your spiritual state made physical, your sins given form, your redemption depending on your ability to strike them down. You crouch, finding your balance, feeling the weight of the stone, the solidity of the floor beneath your feet, and then you roll. The stone leaves your hands and begins its journey down the cloister walkway. Listen to the sound it makes. It's not the crisp rumble of a modern bowling ball on polished wood. It's deeper, more resonant. Stone on stone, the rumble is hollow, almost like distant thunder, amplified by the stone corridor, echoing off the walls and columns and the vaulted ceiling above. The sound builds as the stone rolls, gaining speed, a heavy rumbling that seems to come from the earth itself. And then, impact. The stone strikes the kegel. The wooden pin flies backward, clattering against the stone floor, a sharp percussion that rings out through the sacred space. The echo continues, bouncing off walls, fading slowly into silence. In that silence, you feel something shift. Relief. Release. The pin is down. The haida is struck. Your sins, or at least this one, this burden you've carried, has been physically knocked away. The symbolism is powerful precisely because it's physical. You don't just pray for forgiveness, though prayer remains central to your faith. You act. You take up a stone, you aim, you release, you strike. Your body participates in your redemption. Your muscles engage in the work of spiritual cleansing. And when the pin falls, when that satisfying clatter echoes through the cloister, the feeling isn't just mental or spiritual, it's visceral. Something has been accomplished. Something has been struck down. By the 9th century, the practice has become more formalized, particularly in Benedictine monasteries. Historical records from the Abbey of St. Emmeram in Regensburg describe monks playing what they call kegeln, a structured version of the ritual that has evolved from a simple spiritual exercise into something with rules, scoring, and deeper symbolic meaning. The single pin has become 9 pins, arranged in a diamond pattern on the packed earth or stone floor. And these 9 pins represent something specific. The 9 vices that every Christian must overcome. Pride standing at the front, the sin that leads to all others. Behind it, arranged in careful formation, envy, wrath, sloth, avarice, gluttony, lust, deceit, and hypocrisy. 9 aspects of fallen human nature, 9 obstacles between the soul and salvation. Picture yourself as a monk in this Benedictine community, living a life of prayer, work, and contemplation. The Abbey's routine structures your days: matins before dawn, lauds at first light, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, compline. 8 times daily, you and your brothers gather to pray. Between these prayer times, you work, copying manuscripts, tending gardens, brewing beer, baking bread, teaching novices. And sometimes, in the courtyard or the cloister, you play kegeln. But this isn't play as we understand it, not entirely. It remains penitential practice. The game is austere, serious. You've carved the ball yourself from lignum vitae wood, one of the hardest woods known, imported from the Caribbean at great expense, turned on a lathe until it's perfectly spherical, heavy, and dense and smooth. The pins, too, are handcrafted, each one carefully shaped. Their surface is left rough or smoothed, depending on the craftsman's skill. The lane where you play has been prepared with care. The earth has been packed hard, wetted and stamped and allowed to dry, then wetted and stamped again, creating a surface almost as hard as stone. Or perhaps you're fortunate enough to have an indoor lane, the floor made of wooden planks fitted tightly together, the wood aged and hardened by years of use. You approach the lane carrying your ball, its weight familiar in your hands. Behind you, your brothers wait their turns, standing in silence or murmuring prayers. The abbot watches, his presence lending gravity to the proceedings. This is not recreation in the sense of escape or frivolity. This is recreation in its original sense. Recreation, the making anew of the spirit through physical action. You focus on the 9 pins arranged in their diamond, pride at the front, closest to you, presenting itself as the primary target. Behind it, the other vices, each one a part of yourself you're meant to overcome. You've confessed these sins in chapter this morning, acknowledged them before God and your community. Now you make that acknowledgement physical. The ball is heavy in your hands. You find your stance, bend your knees, draw back your arm, and you release. The ball leaves your hands and begins its journey down the lane. The sound is different from the earlier stone-on-stone rumble. This is wood on packed earth, a deeper thud, thud, thud as the ball rolls, picking up speed, tracking toward the waiting pins. And then, contact. The ball strikes pride head on. The pin flies backward, colliding with envy and wrath. 3 pins clatter down, their wooden bodies clattering against earth or floor, a sharp percussive crash that echoes in the enclosed space. 6 pins remain standing. You've made progress, struck down 3 vices, but others remain. You'll have another roll, another chance to knock down what stands between you and spiritual purity. This is the psychological genius of the practice. Sin and vice, abstract concepts that can feel overwhelming, are made concrete. They're given physical form as wooden pins that can be knocked down. Your spiritual state, usually measured in invisible ways, prayers said, temptations resisted, good deeds performed, becomes visible in the pattern of standing and fallen pins. And the satisfaction of knocking them all down, of achieving what the monks call a strike, even centuries before that term will be coined, provides a feeling of accomplishment that reinforces the spiritual message. You can overcome these things. You can strike down what burdens you. You are capable of change and redemption. The sound of pins falling in a stone cloister is remarkable. Each pin that drops adds to the cacophony. Wood on stone, clattering, bouncing, the sounds overlapping and echoing, amplified by the acoustics of the space. And then, after the last pin settles, there's silence. Complete, profound silence. In that silence, there's a moment of recognition. The vices are down. The sins are struck. You stand before God with a clean slate, at least symbolically, at least for this moment. As centuries pass, the spiritual significance of Kegel gradually fades, even as the practice spreads. By the medieval period, bowling has moved from cloisters and churches into taverns and town squares. The game that began as penitential practice becomes recreation in the modern sense, entertainment, competition, social activity. The transformation is gradual. Initially, the connection to spiritual cleansing remains. People still understand that knocking down pins represents overcoming sin or evil. But as the game spreads and becomes commercialized, that meaning grows fainter. By the 15th and 16th centuries, bowling is primarily a gambling game, with men wagering substantial sums on their ability to knock down pins. The church, which created the game, now sometimes bans it, particularly when played on Sundays or when gambling becomes excessive. King Henry VIII of England, reigning in the early 16th century, loves bowling so much he has lanes installed at Whitehall Palace. But his version has nothing to do with redemption or spiritual cleansing. It's simply sport, a way to pass time, to compete with courtiers, to display skill and strength. He even declares it a game only for the nobility, forbidding commoners from playing. A far cry from its origins as a practice available to any Christian seeking to cleanse their soul. Yet, even as the spiritual meaning fades, certain aspects linger. The satisfaction of a strike, of knocking down all the pins with a single roll, carries echoes of that original feeling of accomplishment and relief. The terminology persists too. In Germany, bowlers are still called keglers, a direct reference to those original wooden clubs that represented sin and heathens. The shape of the game, a person, a ball, pins at a distance, the challenge of striking them down, remains unchanged across centuries. By the 19th century, when German and English immigrants bring bowling to America, it has become fully secularized. The pins represent nothing except points to be scored. The ball is simply a tool for knocking them down. The game is played for exercise, for social connection, for competition and entertainment. And yet, ask any bowler why a strike feels so satisfying, and you'll hear descriptions that echo those early monks. The sense of accomplishment, of everything falling perfectly into place, of, though they might not use this word, redemption. Stand for a moment in a modern bowling alley. The atmosphere could not be more different from those stone cloisters and monastery courtyards. Instead of silence and stone, there's music and carpet and the electronic beep of automated scoring. Instead of handcrafted wooden balls and pins, there's precision-engineered equipment, balls of resin and urethane, pins that are set by machine, lanes oiled in specific patterns to influence ball motion. And yet, when you pick up that ball, when you approach the lane, when you focus on the pins waiting at the far end, something ancient and essential remains. You're still taking aim at something that represents, however abstractly, whatever you want to knock down. Your stress, your worries, your frustrations, the things that burden you. You release the ball. It rumbles down the lane, a sound that, while different from stone on stone, still carries that deep, satisfying resonance. The ball strikes the pins. They explode backward in a satisfying crash of plastic on wood. And if they all fall, if you've achieved a strike, there's a moment, brief but real, of pure satisfaction. Everything knocked down, a clean slate, the psychological reward that drew those early German Christians to roll stones at wooden clubs. The clean slate. That's what endures from bowling's spiritual origins. The game was invented to give people a physical way to experience redemption, to feel the weight of sin lifted, to see their burdens literally struck down and cleared away. That core appeal, the satisfaction of clearing away obstacles, of achieving a perfect result, of starting fresh, is why bowling has survived 17 centuries. The specific spiritual meaning may have faded, but the psychological benefit remains. We still need to feel that we can knock down what stands before us, that we can achieve a clean slate, that redemption, however we define it, is possible. With every detail of these origins, feel your thoughts drifting further from the present and deeper into the past. Just as the rules of these games slowly formed over centuries, let your body slowly find its stillness as we move toward our next journey. Picture southern Finland 5,000 years ago, around the year 3000 before the Common Era. The landscape is a tapestry of frozen water and snow-covered earth. This region holds more lakes within 100 square kilometers than anywhere else on Earth. Countless bodies of water that sparkle under summer sun but freeze solid in winter's grip, becoming barriers that must be crossed if you want to reach the next village, find game for hunting, deliver messages, trade goods, or simply survive. The winters are brutal. Temperatures plunge well below freezing for months at a time. The wind sweeps across the frozen lakes with nothing to slow it, a biting, relentless force that steals warmth from any exposed skin that makes every journey an ordeal. Walking around these frozen lakes, following their shorelines to avoid crossing the uncertain ice, can add hours or even days to a journey. The snow is deep, exhausting to trudge through. Energy is precious when food is scarce, and survival depends on conserving every calorie. And so, out of necessity, innovation emerges. Someone, we'll never know who, has an idea. The leg bones of horses and cattle, the large animals that share this harsh landscape, are long and smooth. The shin bones particularly, dense and solid, shaped almost like runners. What if these bones could be strapped to feet? What if they could allow a person to glide across the ice rather than walk through snow? Feel one of these ancient bone skates in your imagination. It's made from the leg bone of a horse, perhaps 18 inches long, smoothed and shaped by stone tools. The natural curve of the bone has been preserved, and the underside has been ground flat against rough stone, creating a surface that will contact the ice. At the front and back, holes have been drilled using pointed implements. Patient work that might have taken hours. Through these holes, leather straps will be threaded, securing the bone to the bottom of your boot or wrapping around your foot and ankle. The bone itself carries a faint smell, earthy, animal, the last traces of marrow and tissue despite thorough cleaning. Its surface has been rubbed with fat or oil, making it slightly slick, helping it glide more smoothly across ice. You strap these bone runners to your feet, securing them as tightly as possible. They're not comfortable. The leather digs into your foot. The bone feels foreign, awkward, like walking on stilts made of slippery stone. And then you push off across the frozen lake, not skating as we understand it, with powerful leg strokes and graceful glides. These bone skates have no blade, no sharp edge to grip the ice. Instead, they're essentially runners. And propulsion comes not from your legs, but from your arms. You hold a long stick, perhaps a staff carved from birch or ash, and you push it against the ice between your legs, using your upper body to drive yourself forward while your legs remain relatively straight, providing balance. Listen to the sound. It's not the crisp hiss of modern skates. It's rougher, a scraping, grinding sound as bone slides across ice. A hollow, slightly resonant scraping that varies with the ice's texture and temperature. When the ice is smooth and cold, the sound is higher, more sustained. When it's rough or beginning to soften, the sound becomes grittier, more broken. The speed is modest by our standards, about 8 kilometers per hour, roughly the same as a brisk walk on firm ground. But here's what matters. This method of traveling across frozen lakes saves 10% of your energy compared to walking around them. 10% might not sound like much, but when survival is measured in calories, when the difference between exhaustion and making it home could mean life or death, 10% is enormous. It's the difference between reaching the next village before nightfall and being caught in darkness on the ice. It's the difference between successfully hunting and returning empty-handed because you ran out of strength. So you glide across the frozen mirror of the lake, the bone runners carrying you forward with each push of your stick. The wind bites at your face, sharp and cold enough to numb your cheeks. Your breath forms clouds in the frigid air. Around you, the landscape is monochrome: white snow, gray-white ice, the dark smudges of distant trees at the shoreline. The sky is that pale winter color, somewhere between blue and white, offering weak sunlight that illuminates without warming. This is ice skating at its origin. Not art, not sport, not recreation, just survival. A tool invented by people desperate to move more efficiently through a frozen world, to conserve the energy they need to stay alive through the long northern winter. Millennia pass, and ice skating spreads across northern Europe wherever winter freezes water solid. The basic technology remains largely unchanged: bone or wooden runners strapped to feet, until the 13th and 14th centuries, when a revolution occurs in the Netherlands. The Dutch live in a land defined by water. Canals and rivers crisscross the landscape, providing natural highways for trade and communication in summer. But in winter, these waterways freeze, and the Dutch need to maintain their connections between villages and cities. They begin to innovate, creating skates that are more than just runners. Picture a Dutch skate from the 1400s. It's no longer bone but wood, a carved wooden platform shaped to fit the foot, perhaps with raised edges to provide some stability. And crucially, attached to the bottom of this wooden base is a strip of iron, the first metal blade. It's not refined like modern blades, not precision manufactured. It's hand-forged by the local blacksmith, probably rough and irregular, but it's metal, and metal changes everything. Metal provides an edge, not a sharp, precise edge at first, but enough of an edge that the skater can begin to push not just forward, but also side to side, can begin to turn more easily, can gain more control over direction. The iron blade can grip the ice in ways bone never could, can bite into the surface and provide leverage. And for the first time, there's a new sound. Listen as the metal blade contacts ice. It's not the grinding scrape of bone. It's something clearer, higher, more musical. A hiss. The sharp hiss of steel on a frozen mirror that will become one of ice skating's most distinctive sensory signatures. It's the sound of metal vibrating as it shears across crystalline ice, creating a note that varies with speed and pressure, that sings in a way bone never did. These Dutch skates are still primarily practical. They're used by messengers carrying news between towns, by traders transporting goods across frozen canals, by ordinary citizens making their daily journeys through winter. But something subtle is beginning to change. With better control, with the ability to turn and stop more precisely, skating is becoming less purely utilitarian and more skillful. People begin to notice who skates well and who doesn't. Children start to play on skates, racing each other, inventing games. By 1850, an American named Edward Bushnell creates all-steel blades, the entire runner made of metal rather than metal attached to wood. Steel blades are lighter, more responsive, more durable. They allow for sharper edges, tighter turns, more complex maneuvers. The technology continues to evolve, but the fundamental shift has occurred. Skating is no longer just about crossing frozen landscapes efficiently. It's becoming something else, something that requires skill and practice, something that can be done with style. But the transformation from survival tool to art form requires one more crucial element: someone who sees skating not as transportation, but as dance. That person is Jackson Haynes, born in New York in 1840. Trained as a ballet dancer, blessed with both athletic ability and theatrical flair. In the 1860s, the accepted style of skating in America and England is rigid and formal. Skaters trace precise geometric figures on the ice, circles, figure eights, complex patterns, with their bodies held stiff, their movements constrained by rules about proper posture and technique. It's technical, demanding in its own way, but utterly lacking in what Haynes, with his ballet training, recognizes as artistry. Haynes begins to experiment. What if skating could flow like dance? What if skaters could use their arms expressively rather than holding them rigidly? What if they could move to music, letting rhythm guide their movements? What if they could spin and jump and express emotion through motion on ice? His American audiences don't understand. They're confused, possibly threatened by this departure from rigidity. Skating, they believe, should be controlled, restrained, proper. Haynes's flowing, emotive style seems too theatrical, too performative, too much. Frustrated and unappreciated, Haynes leaves America in 1864, sailing for Europe with the hope that continental audiences might be more receptive. He finds success in London, Paris, and Stockholm, but it's in Vienna that Haynes discovers his true home. Vienna, in the 1860s, is the waltz capital of the world, a city obsessed with dance, music, and aesthetic beauty. The Viennese immediately understand what Haynes is offering: ballet on ice, dance translated to a frozen stage, artistic expression given a new medium. Picture Haynes performing in Vienna on a cold winter evening. The ice has been prepared in a sheltered outdoor rink, swept clean of snow, its surface smooth and glowing in the light of torches and lanterns arranged around the perimeter. An orchestra plays, violins and cellos providing a waltz melody that drifts across the ice and through the cold air. The audience, wrapped in fur coats and heavy cloaks, watches with rapt attention, and Haynes skates. He's attached his blade directly to his boot, screwing it on permanently, a new innovation that provides more stability and control. He's added a toe pick to the front of the blade, a serrated edge that will allow him to dig into the ice for jumps and spins. As the music plays, he moves with fluidity that seems impossible on ice, his body flowing through positions borrowed from ballet, his arms sweeping through graceful arcs, his movements perfectly timed to the music's rhythm. He performs a move he's invented, the sit-spin, crouching low on one leg while spinning in place, his other leg extended, his body creating a shape that's both athletic and beautiful. The audience gasps. They've never seen anything like this. This isn't the rigid tracing of figures on ice. This is dance. This is art. This is ice skating transformed into something that touches the emotions, that makes you feel as well as admire. Listen to the sound of Haynes skating. The sharp hiss of his steel blade cutting across ice, but now punctuated by the staccato scratch of the toe pick as he launches into a jump. The sustained note as he glides on one foot with perfect balance. The ascending pitch as he accelerates into a spin. These are the sounds of a new language being invented, the vocabulary of figure skating being created in real time. Haynes founds a skating school in Vienna. His style becomes known as the international style, distinguishing it from the rigid English approach. Students flock to learn from him. He performs throughout Europe, always to enthusiastic crowds. He never returns to America. He dies in Finland in 1875 while traveling, only 35 years old. But his legacy is secure. He has shown the world that skating can be art, that grace and athleticism can combine on ice, that the tool invented for survival can become a medium for beauty. By 1908, figure skating has evolved so far from its origins that it becomes the first winter sport added to the Olympic Games, appearing at the London Summer Olympics because indoor ice rinks make it possible to stage competitions regardless of season. Men and women both compete, performing routines that blend technical difficulty with artistic expression, scoring points for both what they do and how beautifully they do it. The sensory experience has completed its transformation. Instead of the grinding scrape of bone on ice, the desperate push of a stick for propulsion, the biting wind of a survival journey, there's now the controlled environment of an arena. The sharp, clean hiss of precision ground steel blades on perfectly maintained ice. The swelling music of orchestras or recorded scores. The appreciative applause of audiences watching performers in sequined costumes execute quadruple jumps and death spirals. And yet, if you listen closely, you can still hear echoes of those ancient origins. The fundamental physics haven't changed. Steel on ice, friction minimized, momentum translated into grace. The edge that allows a modern skater to lean impossibly far into a turn is a refined version of the edge those Dutch blacksmiths first forged into iron blades 600 years ago. The glide that carries a skater across the ice is the same glide that carried Finnish hunters across frozen lakes 5,000 years ago, just infinitely more refined, consciously beautiful rather than merely efficient. Every Olympic figure skater, every child learning to skate at a local rink, every professional ice dancer performing in a touring show, they're all inheritors of that desperate innovation in prehistoric Finland when someone first strapped bone to feet and discovered that survival could have grace, that necessity could evolve into art, that the frozen mirror of a lake could become a stage for one of humanity's most beautiful expressions. One game evolves into the next, like a dream-shifting focus. Leaving the fields of the past behind, we travel now to a different corner of the world, where a new tradition was born out of necessity and the human spirit of play. As you settle into your pillow tonight, let the world outside fade away. Feel the weight of the day lifting from your shoulders like leaves drifting from autumn branches. The room around you grows quiet, and in this stillness, we're going to journey back to a time when restlessness gave birth to something unexpected. A time when the ocean went silent and creativity found a new path forward. Tonight's story isn't about grand invention or sudden inspiration. It's about the gentle persistence of those who refuse to let stillness become emptiness. It's about surfers standing on California beaches in the 1950s, staring at water as flat as glass, feeling that familiar ache for motion. And it's about how that longing transformed sidewalks and driveways into something they were never meant to be. Waves frozen in concrete So breathe slowly. Let your body sink deeper into comfort, because we're about to explore the origins of skateboarding, not as a sport, but as an act of translation, the art of finding waves where none exist, the pursuit of flow when the sea holds its breath. Picture the Southern California coast in the early 1950s. The post-war economy had settled into a rhythm of prosperity, and along the beaches from Santa Monica to San Diego, a culture was emerging. Surfing, which had roots stretching back centuries to Polynesian islands, was becoming something distinctly Californian. Young people gathered at dawn and dusk, waiting for swells, studying the ocean's moods, learning to read what the water offered. But the ocean is fickle. Some mornings, surfers would arrive to find the Pacific completely calm, its surface reflecting the sky like polished silver. No waves, no motion, just endless glassy stillness. For those whose days revolved around the feeling of carving across moving water, these flat days felt like a kind of quiet torment. The boards sat idle. The wax grew soft in the sun, and restless energy built with nowhere to go. It was during these moments of wanting that something curious happened. Some inventive soul, whose name has been lost to history, along with countless other small acts of genius, looked down at a roller skate, then at a wooden plank, and then, in a leap of imagination that would echo through decades, saw possibility in the pairing. The first skateboards were humble, almost comical in their simplicity. Wooden boards, sometimes just scraps of 2x4s or pieces salvaged from crates, with steel wheels from dismantled roller skates nailed or bolted to the bottom. There's no grip tape to hold feet in place, no curved edges to aid in turning, no precision engineering, just wood and metal, held together by the pure desire to move. Those early riders called it sidewalk surfing, and the name captured something essential. This wasn't meant to be something entirely new. It was meant to be a translation, a way of carrying the sensation of wave riding onto the streets when the ocean offered nothing. They wanted to feel that carving motion, that sense of controlled falling, that dance with gravity and momentum that surfing provided. And on those first crude boards, bumping and rattling down California streets, they found glimpses of it. The experience was raw and unforgiving. The metal wheels offered almost no grip, catching on every pebble, every crack in the pavement. One small stone could bring a rider to a sudden jarring stop, sending them tumbling forward. But in the spaces between obstacles, when the pavement was smooth and the speed built up, there was something there, something worth pursuing. To understand skateboarding's origin is to understand its texture, its sound, its vibration, traveling up through the body. These weren't silent, graceful movements. Skateboarding announced itself with noise and feeling, with sensations that marked it as distinctly different from the fluid quiet of surfing. When those early wheels met pavement, they created a kind of music, not melodic or soothing, but rhythmic and insistent. The sound of metal on concrete was sharp and metallic, a constant clicking and clattering that echoed off buildings and rattled in the chest. Each crack in the sidewalk produced a percussive thump, each seam between concrete slabs a small jolt that traveled from the wheels through the wooden board and into the rider's feet. The vibration was constant and alive. Imagine standing barefoot, as many early skateboarders did, mimicking surfers who rode waves without shoes on a board traveling over rough asphalt. Every imperfection in the surface transmitted itself through the wood into the soles of the feet, up through the ankles and calves, resonating in the knees and hips. The skateboard became an instrument for reading the city's texture, translating the urban landscape into tactile information. There was a roughness to it that surfing didn't have. Water is forgiving in its way, smoothing out the small errors, cushioning falls with buoyancy. Concrete offers no such mercy. The ground is hard and uncompromising, and the wheels communicated this reality with every rotation. Each push forward brought new information. This section of the sidewalk is smooth. This part is crumbled and treacherous. Here, the pavement dips. There, it rises. The sensory world of skateboarding expanded in the early 1970s when Frank Nasworthy introduced urethane wheels to replace the harsh metal and brittle clay versions. The change was transformative. Urethane, a petroleum-based material with remarkable resilience, gripped this pavement instead of skittering across it. The ride became smoother, quieter, more controlled. But even with this improvement, skateboarding remained a tactile conversation between rider and surface. The wheels still sang their rough song, though in a lower, more sustained tone. The vibration still traveled upward, informing the body of every texture, every grain of the concrete beneath. Skateboarders learned to feel the difference between fresh asphalt and weathered cement, between smooth schoolyard surfaces and the grainy texture of public plazas. This sensory richness became central to the experience. The sound of wheels on pavement became a kind of language, communicating success and failure, speed and friction, safety and danger. When a trick landed properly, the board's impact produced a satisfying clack, the wheels reconnecting with ground in a way that felt right to the ears and the body. When something went wrong, the sound changed, becoming discordant, warning of imbalance before the fall even happened. For some skateboarders, particularly those who identified as neurodiverse, this sensory world offered something therapeutic. The constant input, the need to attend to sound and feeling and balance all at once, created a state of total presence. There was no room for wandering thoughts when the body and mind were fully engaged in reading the terrain through vibration and sound. What drew people to skateboarding, especially in those early years when the equipment was primitive and the activity was essentially unknown, wasn't just the physical sensation, it was something deeper, something psychological. It was the pursuit of what we now call flow states, those moments when consciousness narrows to a single point of focus and time seems to stretch or compress. Surfers knew this feeling intimately. On a wave, fully committed to the ride, there existed a kind of timeless present. No past, no future, just the endless now of motion and balance and response. The board beneath the feet, the moving water, the shifting weight, the wind, all combining into an experience that felt both effortless and intensely alive. Skateboarding offered access to the same state, but on asphalt instead of ocean. The conditions for flow were all present, a challenge that matched skill level, immediate feedback from every movement, clear goals embedded in each trick or line, and complete absorption in the activity. When everything aligned, skateboarders found themselves in that same transcendent space surfers knew from waves. The experience was democratic in a way that surfing couldn't be. You didn't need to live near the ocean or wait for the right swell. The concrete was always there, patient and unchanging, ready whenever the desire for flow arose. Early morning, late night, the pavement remained available, offering its rough surface as a canvas for movement. This accessibility helped skateboarding develop its own culture, separate from surfing, yet sharing that same core pursuit. Skateboarders spoke of sessions where hours passed like minutes, where the rest of the world faded into irrelevance, and only the board, the ground, and the body in motion mattered. They described a sense of freedom, of euphoria, of efficacy and transcendence that mirrored what researchers study in flow states documented in athletes and artists. The challenge was essential to maintaining this state. Too easy, and boredom crept in. Too difficult, and anxiety took over. But when the difficulty balanced perfectly with ability, when each attempt pushed slightly beyond comfort without crossing into impossibility, the flow state emerged naturally. Skateboarders would spend hours working on a single trick, not out of obligation, but because the pursuit itself was rewarding, each attempt bringing new information, new understanding, new closeness to success. There was a meditative quality to this repetition, the same motion performed again and again with tiny adjustments, building muscle memory and refining technique. The mind quieted, verbal thought diminished, and a different kind of knowing emerged, one rooted in the body, rather than conscious analysis. This was knowledge that couldn't be fully explained in words, only felt and demonstrated. For many skateboarders, especially young people navigating the complexities of growing up, these flow states offered refuge, a place where anxiety couldn't reach, where self-doubt fell away, where identity became simple: person, board, pavement, motion. The skateboard became a tool for managing mental health long before anyone used that language to describe it. The connection to community reinforced these psychological benefits. Skateboarding, while individual in execution, was often social in practice. Skaters gathered at spots, sharing the space, cheering each other's successes, commiserating over failures. This combination of personal challenge and communal support created an environment where flow could flourish, where each person's pursuit enhanced rather than competed with others. The true artistry of early skateboarding lay in its creative reinterpretation of the built environment. Skateboarders looked at the city and saw something no one else did. Stairs became opportunities for aerial tricks. Handrails transformed into balance beams for sliding. Empty swimming pools, drained during California's drought in the mid-1970s, became concrete versions of perfect wave barrels. This reimagining required imagination, bordering on the visionary. The Z-Boys, that legendary team from Venice Beach's Dogtown neighborhood, pioneered this new way of seeing. They didn't just skate, they explored. They snuck into backyards to ride empty pools, discovering that the curved walls allowed for vertical movement that mimicked the face of a wave. They carved lines that drew directly from the aggressive, low-crouched style of Hawaiian surfers, translating water dynamics to concrete physics. Each surface offered different possibilities. Smooth warehouse floors allowed for speed and long, sweeping carves. Rough street asphalt demanded different techniques, shorter movements, constant adjustment. The varied textures of the urban landscape became a vocabulary, and skilled skateboarders learned to speak fluently in this language of surfaces. The evolution of skateboard design followed this creative exploration. When riders wanted to do more than just roll forward, Larry Stevenson invented the kicktail, that upturned back end of the board that allowed for tricks and sharper turns. When the limitations of metal and clay wheels became too restrictive, urethane wheels arrived to expand what was possible. Each innovation opened new territory, new ways to find those wave-like moments on solid ground. By the mid-1970s, skateboarding had developed into something that stood on its own, no longer just a substitute for surfing, but a distinct practice with its own techniques, culture, and aesthetics. The Del Mar National Championships in 1975 showcased this transformation. While traditional freestyle tricks still dominated, the Zephyr team's aggressive, surf-inspired approach showed a future where skateboarding would continue to evolve, drawing from surfing while becoming something entirely itself. The core pursuit remained constant, even as styles changed, finding flow, that sensation of effortless movement, of harmony between body and board and ground. Whether carving gentle turns down a hill or launching into the air off a pool's edge, skateboarders sought the same state of being that surfers found on waves. They created their own waves from concrete and creativity, from persistence and imagination. This quest continues today. Generations after those first surfers attached roller skate wheels to wooden planks. Modern skateboarding has split into countless styles and approaches, from street skating's technical complexity to vert skating's aerial acrobatics to longboarding's cruise-focused simplicity. But at the heart of all of it remains that original desire to find motion, to discover flow, to create waves where the physical world offers none. The beauty of skateboarding's origin story lies in its simplicity and its universality. It speaks to a fundamental human need to transform the world around us, to take what exists and reimagine it as something that serves our deeper desires. Those early skateboarders didn't accept the ocean's stillness as an ending. They found another way forward, and in doing so, created something that would spread across the globe, touching millions of lives. As you drift toward sleep tonight, perhaps you can carry with you this image: a young person standing on a wooden board with wheels, pushing forward down a sidewalk as the sun sets over California. The rough vibration travels up through their body. The wheels sing their gravelly song against the pavement, and for a moment, brief but eternal, they feel what they came seeking: the flow, the wave, the perfect balance between falling and flying. If you enjoyed this journey into skateboarding's origins, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Pillow Trace for more interesting stories to listen to before bedtime. Sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with effortless motion.